Lisa Matthews stood before the full-length mirror, hardly believing the day had finally arrived. Her white gown sparkled in the soft light of the bridal suite, and her dark hair was elegantly swept up, adorned with tiny white flowers. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. "You look beautiful, honey," her mother said, wiping away a tear. Lisa smiled. "Thanks, Mom. I can't believe I'm marrying Mike in just an hour." The past year had been a whirlwind. Meeting Mike at her cousin's barbecue, their whirlwind romance, and now their wedding day. At 28, Lisa had begun to wonder if she'd ever find the one. But from the moment she saw Mike's warm brown eyes and charming smile, she knew he was special. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "It's time," her father called. Lisa's heart raced as she made her way to the chapel. The music swelled, and she began her walk down the aisle. Mike stood at the altar, looking dashing in his tuxedo, his face lighting up as he saw her. Lisa felt like she was floating on air. The ceremony was a blur of emotion and tender words. Before she knew it, the minister was pronouncing them husband and wife. Mike leaned in for the kiss, and Lisa's heart soared. But their lips had barely touched when a commotion erupted at the back of the chapel. Lisa turned, startled to see several police officers striding purposefully down the aisle. "Michael Thompson?" the lead officer called out. Mike tensed beside her. "Yes," he responded, confusion evident in his voice. "You are under arrest for fraud, theft, and impersonation," the officer declared, producing a pair of handcuffs. The chapel erupted in gasps and murmurs. Lisa stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. "There must be some mistake," she stammered. But the officers were already handcuffing Mike, reciting his rights as they led him away. Mike looked back at Lisa, his eyes wide with panic. "Lisa, I swear I don't know what this is about. Please, you have to help me." Lisa watched in horror as her new husband was escorted out of the chapel. Her perfect day had shattered in an instant, leaving her standing alone at the altar in her wedding gown, surrounded by shocked guests and a sea of unanswered questions. In a daze, Lisa followed the procession outside, where Mike was being put into a police car. Detective Reeves, a stern-looking woman with graying hair, approached Lisa. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Detective Reeves. I'm sorry to interrupt your wedding, but we've been tracking this man for months. He's wanted in 3 states for a series of confidence schemes." Lisa shook her head vehemently. "No, you've got it all wrong. I know Mike. He's not a criminal." Detective Reeves's expression softened slightly. "I understand this is a shock, but we have solid evidence. Your husband isn't who he claims to be. His real name is Samuel Reese, and he's been living under false identities for years." Lisa felt her world spinning. This couldn't be happening. She watched helplessly as the police car drove away, carrying Mike, or whoever he was, with it. Her mother appeared at her side, wrapping a supportive arm around her. "Oh, sweetie," she murmured. But Lisa straightened her shoulders, a look of determination replacing the shock on her face. "This is wrong, Mom. I know Mike. Whatever evidence they think they have, it's a mistake, and I'm going to prove it." As the confused and gossiping wedding guests began to disperse, Lisa stood on the chapel steps, her white gown a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. She didn't know how, but she was going to get to the bottom of this. She would find out the truth and clear Mike's name. The days following Mike's arrest passed in a blur for Lisa. Instead of embarking on their honeymoon in Bali, she found herself navigating a maze of legal procedures and unanswered questions. She visited Mike in jail, but their conversations left her more confused than ever. "I swear, Lisa, I don't know what they're talking about," Mike insisted, his eyes pleading through the visitation room glass. "I'm not this Samuel Reese guy. There has to be some explanation." Lisa wanted to believe him, but doubt had begun to creep in. She'd known Mike for only a year. What if there was more to his past than he'd let on? Determined to uncover the truth, Lisa decided to start her own investigation. She began with Mike's family, hoping they could shed some light on his history. Mike's parents, Robert and Ellen Thompson, lived in a modest suburban home an hour outside the city. When Lisa arrived, Ellen answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Oh, Lisa," Ellen said, pulling her into a hug. "This is all so terrible. How are you holding up?" Lisa managed a weak smile. "I'm okay. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. Can we talk?" Over cups of tea in the living room, Lisa gently probed for information about Mike's past. Robert and Ellen seemed just as bewildered by the accusations as she was. Mike's always been such a good boy, Ellen insisted. He did well in school, never got into trouble. This whole thing doesn't make any sense. Robert nodded in agreement. We've got photos of him growing up, school records, everything. How could he be this other person they're claiming? Lisa's heart lifted slightly. This was a good start. Could I see some of those photos and records? They might help clear things up. Ellen eagerly retrieved several photo albums and a box of old documents. Lisa spent the next few hours poring over years of Mike's life. Birthday parties, graduations, family vacations. It all seemed to support Mike's claim of innocence. As she was about to leave, a photo caught her eye. It showed Mike at what looked like a college party, his arm around a pretty blonde girl. "Who's this?" Lisa asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Ellen peered at the photo. "Oh, that's Jenna, Mike's old girlfriend from college. They dated for quite a while, but it ended badly. Mike doesn't like to talk about it." Lisa's investigative instincts perked up. A bad breakup? A girlfriend Mike had never mentioned? It might be nothing, but it was worth looking into. Thanking the Thompsons, Lisa left with a renewed sense of purpose. She had evidence of Mike's past, but she also had a new lead to follow. Back at home, Lisa spread out the photos and documents on the dining room table. She was so engrossed in her examination that she almost missed the knock at the door. It was Detective Reeves. "Mrs. Thompson, I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to check in and see if you've remembered anything that might help our investigation." Lisa hesitated, then decided to be forthcoming. "Actually, Detective, I've been doing some investigating of my own. I've got photos and records here that show Mike's history. He can't be this Samuel Reese person." Detective Reeves's expression remained neutral as she examined the evidence. "This is interesting, Mrs. Thompson, but I'm afraid it doesn't prove anything. Skilled con artists are experts at creating false backgrounds. We have witnesses who've identified your husband as Samuel Reese." Lisa felt deflated, but she wasn't ready to give up. "Oh, what about fingerprints? DNA? Surely those would prove Mike's real identity." "We're working on that," Detective Reeves replied. "But these things take time. In the meantime, I'd advise you to be careful. If your husband is who we think he is, you may not know him as well as you think." After the detective left, Lisa sat at her computer, staring at the search bar. She took a deep breath and typed, "Jenna college girlfriend Mike Thompson." Lisa's online search for Jenna yielded little concrete information, but it gave her a starting point. After several dead ends and false leads, she finally tracked down a woman who seemed to match the girl in the old college photo, Jenna Prescott, now working as a real estate agent in a neighboring city. Hesitant to reveal her connection to Mike, Lisa posed as a potential homebuyer to secure a meeting with Jenna. As she walked into the real estate office, her heart pounded. The woman who greeted her was undoubtedly the same blonde from the photograph, though a decade older. "Mrs. Johnson?" Jenna asked, extending her hand. "I'm Jenna Prescott. How can I help you today?" Lisa shook her hand, mustering a smile. "Actually, I'm here about something other than real estate. My name is Lisa Thompson. I'm Mike Thompson's wife." Jenna's welcoming smile faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. "Mike Thompson, I'm sorry, I don't—" "Please," Lisa interrupted. "I know you dated in college. I've seen the photos. Mike's in trouble, and I need to understand more about his past." Jenna's professional demeanor cracked. She glanced around the office before lowering her voice. Let's talk somewhere private." They ended up at a small cafe down the street. Once seated with their coffees, Jenna's facade crumbled entirely. "I never thought I'd hear that name again," she said, her hands shaking slightly. "What kind of trouble is Mike in?" Lisa explained the situation, watching Jenna's reactions carefully. The other woman seemed genuinely shocked by the news of Mike's arrest. "That doesn't sound like the Mike I knew," Jenna said, shaking her head. "But then again, maybe I never really knew him at all." "What do you mean?" Lisa pressed. Jenna sighed. "Mike and I dated for almost 2 years in college. I thought we were in love, that we had a future together. But then things started to change." Lisa leaned in, hanging on every word. "He became secretive, always making excuses to miss plans or disappear for days at a time. When I confronted him, he'd get defensive or change the subject. Then one day, I sucked at odds. I found a fake ID in his drawer. When I asked him about it, he blew up at me. We had a huge fight, and that was the end of it. He dropped out of college soon after, and I never saw him again." Lisa's mind raced. This didn't align with the story Mike had told her about his college years. Did you ever find out what he was using the fake ID for? Jenna shook her head. No, but there were rumors. Some people said he was involved in some kind of underground gambling ring. Others thought it might be drugs. I never knew for sure. As they continued talking, Lisa's certainty in Mike's innocence began to waver. There was clearly more to his past than he'd let on. But did that make him the criminal the police claimed he was? Leaving the cafe, Lisa's head spun with new information and fresh doubts. She was so distracted that she almost missed the dark sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding the driver who seemed to be watching her. Back at home, Lisa found a message on her answering machine from Detective Reeves. Mrs. Thompson, we've gotten the preliminary results from the fingerprint analysis. I think you should come down to the station. There's something you need to see. Lisa's stomach churned. What had they found? Was she about to discover that her entire relationship with Mike had been built on lies? As she grabbed her keys to head to the police station, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You don't know what you're getting into. Lisa stared at the message, a chill running down her spine. She was starting to realize that uncovering the truth about Mike might be more dangerous than she'd anticipated. But she'd come too far to back down now. With a deep breath, she deleted the message and walked out the door, determined to face whatever revelations awaited her at the police station. Lisa's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing with possibilities. The drive to the police station felt interminable, each traffic light an eternity of anticipation and dread. As she entered the precinct, Detective Reeves met her with a grim expression. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming. Please, follow me. They settled into a small, windowless room. The detective placed a file on the table between them. We've completed the fingerprint analysis, Reeves began, her tone carefully neutral. The results are complicated. Lisa leaned forward, her heart pounding. What do you mean complicated? Reeves opened the file. Your husband's prints match those of Michael Thompson on some official documents. Birth certificate, driver's license, that sort of thing, but she paused, meeting Lisa's gaze. They also match prints found at 3 crime scenes associated with Samuel Reese. The room seemed to spin. Lisa gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. That's impossible. There has to be some mistake. We've run the tests multiple times, Reeves said softly. The prints are an exact match. Lisa's mind raced, grasping for an explanation. Could they have been planted? Maybe someone's framing Mike? Reeves shook her head. It's highly unlikely. The prints were found years apart, in different states. This goes beyond simple identity theft, Mrs. Thompson. I'm sorry, but it appears your husband has been living a double life for quite some time. Lisa felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Everything she thought she knew about Mike, about her life, was crumbling. As she left the station, dazed and disoriented, Lisa barely noticed the same dark sedan from earlier, now parked across the street. But as she approached her car, a man stepped out of the shadows. Mrs. Thompson? His voice was low, urgent. We need to talk. It's about your husband. Lisa's instincts screamed danger. She fumbled for her keys, ready to run, but the man's next words stopped her cold. I know the truth about Mike and Samuel, and I can prove he's being set up. Against her better judgment, Lisa found herself following the stranger to a nearby diner. He introduced himself as Alex, claiming to be an old friend of Mike's. Mike's in way over his head, Alex explained in hushed tones. He got involved with some dangerous people years ago, a group that specializes in high-stakes cons and corporate espionage. He's been trying to get out for years, but they won't let him go. Lisa's mind reeled. Are you saying Mike really is a con artist? Alex shook his head. Not exactly. Mike was recruited for his computer skills. He helped with some less than legal hacks, but he never stole money or conned people directly. When he tried to leave, they threatened him, said they'd frame him for their biggest jobs if he didn't keep working for them. It was almost too much to process. Why are you telling me this? Lisa demanded. Because he was also trapped and could not move out, and by helping Lisa expose the truth, he could potentially secure leniency for himself if the organization was brought down, Alex said, leaning in. As Mike was reluctant to work with them further, someone in the organization got nervous. They decided Mike was a liability, and now they're using this Samuel's identity they created years ago to take him out of the picture permanently. Lisa's head spun with questions. But before she could voice them, Alex tensed, his eyes darting to the diner's entrance. "We've been made," he hissed. "Listen carefully. There's a storage unit in Mike's name at the Central Storage Facility on 5th Street, Unit 237. The evidence you need is there, but be careful. These people are watching you." With that, Alex slipped out the back door, leaving Lisa alone with her racing thoughts and a growing sense of danger. As she drove home, Lisa's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to believe Alex's story. It would mean Mike wasn't the hardened criminal the police believed him to be. But another part wondered if this was just another layer of deception. One thing was clear, she needed to check out that storage unit. But as she pulled into her driveway, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The once familiar shadows of her neighborhood now seemed to hide unseen threats. Inside, Lisa paced her living room, weighing her options. She could go to the police with this new information, but what if Alex was right about corrupt officials being involved? And what if investigating the storage unit destroyed evidence that could help Mike? Lisa barely slept that night, her mind churning with possibilities and fears. As dawn broke, she steeled herself for what lay ahead. She left her phone at home, wary of being tracked, and drove to Central Storage, using a circuitous route to shake any potential tail. The facility was quiet when she arrived. Lisa's heart raced as she approached Unit 237, half expecting to be ambushed at any moment. She input the code Alex had given her, and the lock clicked open. Inside, she found a small space filled with boxes and a dusty file cabinet. Lisa began to sift through the contents, her hands shaking. Most of the boxes contained old clothes and books, the mundane debris of a life packed away. But in the file cabinet, she struck gold. Hidden in a false bottom drawer, Lisa discovered a laptop and a thick folder of documents. She opened the folder, her eyes widening as she scanned its contents. There were photos of Mike with people she didn't recognize, copies of emails discussing jobs and marks, and most damning of all, a document detailing the creation of the Samuel Reese identity. Lisa's world tilted on its axis. Mike had been living a double life, just as the police suspected. But as she dug deeper, she realized Alex had been telling the truth. The documents painted a picture of a man trapped in a world he desperately wanted to escape. Suddenly, a noise outside the unit made Lisa freeze. Footsteps approached, and a shadow fell across the partially open door. "Well, well," a woman's voice drawled. "Looks like Mike's little wife is quite the detective." Lisa spun around to find herself face to face with a familiar figure, Jenna, Mike's ex-girlfriend. But the warm, flustered woman from the real estate office was gone. In her place stood someone cold and calculating, with a gun pointed squarely at Lisa's chest. "Jenna," Lisa gasped. "What are you doing here?" Jenna smirked. "Cleaning up loose ends. Did you really think it would be that easy to uncover the truth?" As Jenna explained, the pieces fell into place. She wasn't just Mike's ex, she was a key player in the criminal organization. It was Jenna who had recruited Mike in college, using their relationship to draw him into the world of corporate espionage and cons. "Mike was our golden boy," Jenna said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "But he got soft, wanted out. We couldn't let that happen, so we decided to cut our losses." "By framing him as Samuel Reese," Lisa finished, the full picture finally clear. Jenna nodded. "Smart girl. Too smart for your own good, I'm afraid." As Jenna raised her gun, time seemed to slow. Lisa's mind raced, searching for a way out. In a desperate move, she flung the laptop at Jenna's face. The distraction was enough for Lisa to lunge forward, grappling for the gun. In the struggle, a shot rang out. Lisa felt a searing pain in her arm, but managed to knock the weapon from Jenna's grasp. They grappled on the floor of the storage unit, Lisa fighting with every ounce of strength she possessed. Suddenly, voices shouted from outside. "Police, freeze!" Detective Reeves burst in, gun drawn, with several officers behind her. In a matter of moments, Jenna was in handcuffs, and Lisa found herself being tended to by paramedics. As she sat in the back of an ambulance, her arm bandaged, Lisa watched Jenna being led away. Detective Reeves approached, her face a mix of concern and admiration. "Mrs. Thompson, that was incredibly reckless," she admonished. "But I have to admit, you've cracked this case wide open." Lisa managed a weak smile. "So you believe me about Mike now?" Reeves nodded. "The evidence you've uncovered, combined with Jenna's arrest, changes everything. We'll be releasing your husband pending further investigation." As the adrenaline wore off, exhaustion hit Lisa like a wave. But through the fatigue and pain, a glimmer of hope emerged. She had uncovered the truth and cleared Mike's name. Now came the hard part, confronting her husband about his past and deciding if their relationship could survive the lies and danger that had nearly torn them apart. Mike was released from custody and immediately admitted for observation due to the stress of his ordeal. Lisa came to meet Mike. The hospital room was quiet, save for the steady beep of monitors. Lisa sat in a chair next to Mike's bed, her bandaged arm a reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything. As Mike stirred awake, his eyes found Lisa's. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. Lisa, Mike finally said, his voice hoarse. I don't even know where to begin. Lisa took a deep breath. How about the truth? All of it, Mike. No more secrets. Over the next hour, Mike laid bare the story of his past. He explained how he'd been recruited in college, seduced by the excitement and the money. He described his growing disillusionment, his attempts to leave, and the threats that kept him trapped. When I met you, Mike said, his eyes glistening, I saw a chance at a real life, away from all that. I thought I could just walk away, start fresh. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. Lisa listened, her emotions a turbulent mix of anger, sympathy, and love. When Mike finished, she took his hand. I won't pretend this doesn't change things, she said softly. You lied to me, Mike. You put us both in danger. But I understand why, and I know the man I fell in love with wasn't a complete lie. Mike squeezed her hand. Where do we go from here? Lisa managed a small smile. First, we cooperate fully with the police. Your testimony can help bring down this entire organization. Then, we take it one day at a time. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of police interviews, legal meetings, and tearful conversations with family and friends. Mike's cooperation proved invaluable, leading to multiple arrests and the dismantling of the criminal network. Throughout it all, Lisa stood by Mike's side, but she also insisted on couples therapy. They had a lot to work through, trust to rebuild, fears to confront, and a new life to plan. As summer turned to fall, Lisa and Mike found themselves standing on the beach, where they'd had their first date. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I never properly thanked you, Mike said, turning to face Lisa. You risked everything to uncover the truth and save me. I don't deserve you. Lisa shook her head. It's not about deserving, Mike. It's about choosing. Every day, we choose who we want to be and who we want to be with. I'm choosing you, the real you, flaws and all. Mike pulled her close. I choose you too, Lisa, always. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Lisa realized that their journey was far from over. There would be good days and bad, moments of doubt and moments of joy. But they had weathered a storm that would have broken many couples, and emerged stronger for it. The future stretched out before them, no longer shadowed by secrets and lies, but bright with possibility. It wouldn't be the fairy tale ending Lisa had once imagined, but it would be real. A life built on honesty, forgiveness, and a love that had been tested by fire. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Lisa and Mike turned towards home, ready to face whatever came next, together.